Hi, and welcome back to the Save It for Parts channel. Today we've got a little bit of a look at off-grid and emergency power supplies. This video is sponsored by Powersmart, who sent me the 4500 watt generator you see below. We'll be getting into that in a minute. As a backstory, I grew up in Alaska where we relied on generators for basically 95% of our power. We had a little bit of hydroelectric and other stuff, but big internal combustion generators fueled most of our daily electric needs around the house. When I moved here to Minnesota, I actually bought a generator and kept that around for emergencies, but the power grid here, when I moved here, it was great. We had almost no outages for the first 5 or 10 years that I lived here in St. Paul. Now recently, Xcel Energy has been kind of going downhill. Their service is getting worse. Their maintenance is... The power grid is kind of on the decline. And unfortunately, we've been seeing a lot more power outages, especially with the increase in storms we've been having. Thanks to climate change, we've been having more and bigger storms. And in fact, we here in Minnesota are still subsidizing Texas on our power and gas bills because their system completely failed during a storm a couple of years ago. Anyway, between the increase in severe weather and America's crumbling infrastructure, it's great to have a nice, reliable generator around. Now, the last time I actually used my old generator that I got a decade ago, it had some issues. It started up, but it was providing like 270 volts instead of 120, and we actually blew some stuff out. So that thing has gone a little bit into the scrap pile because it's not reliable anymore. So along comes Powersmart, who offered me this 4500 watt gas generator. We're going to open that up and see what it looks like and then see how it performs in a couple different situations. You'll have to excuse the beat up box here. This was shipped FedEx, who is the cheapest shipper, but that's all you can really say about them. They're the cheapest. We've got a little bit of damage to the packing materials, but hopefully the product inside is fine. It looks like they put enough padding in here to handle shippers like FedEx. Well, we've got motor oil included. That's very nice. I don't even have to go to the hardware store to get oil. That's about it in the package. Very self-contained. Everything you need is right in here. This built-in carry handle is super useful. You can wheel this thing in and out of the garage or off to a job site. Now, this thing is pretty hefty. It weighs a little over 70 pounds empty. And again, this thing is 4,500 watts, so this puts out a lot more power than generators not much smaller than this. We have a quick start guide here for people who don't read the manual. And we've got that in both text and pictogram form. This comes with a built-in CO2 sensor and automatic safety shutoff. Got some more instructions here about starting it. And we have a very wide array of power outputs over here. We even have protective film over all the rubber to keep it looking nice. So we have our regular AC 120 outlets. We've got the CO2 warning over here. We've got USB outputs. That's very thoughtful. You don't even need an adapter to charge your USB devices with this. We have a DC outlet for your car accessories, eco switch, start button, electric start on this. That is very nice. We don't have to sit here all day cranking on the pull start. We have this parallel connect. This is a nice feature that's been showing up on a lot of higher end generators lately where you can parallel two of these together and get combined power output. We've only gotten one of these generators, so we won't be testing that, but it is a cool feature to have. It looks pretty simple to get in here to maintain things. We've got just regular screws. It could be both Phillips or flathead if we want to open this up and change filters. We've got our spark plug. And then, of course, this end has our exhaust with a little flame protector here. Decently sized built-in gas tank. This is supposed to run for about 7 hours on normal load with a full tank of gas. And we have some specifications in the manual here showing us what all of the outputs are and what all the parts are on the generator. We have our technical specs. As with most generators, that 4,500 watts is really the peak output. For normal usage, you're really looking at closer to 3,800 watts. We have an even more detailed part listing in the back of the manual. This is really handy. A lot of manuals don't include any kind of detail like this. Overall, this is a very well-written manual. No spelling mistakes that I've found so far. None of the issues that you get with a lot of manuals for imported products. And while this is sold from Itasca, Illinois, it is technically made in China, as pretty much every product is these days. This is not only the run-stop switch, it is also the choke, and it looks like it is the fuel shutoff. So we can switch this from run to choke, to fuel shutoff, to engine shutoff, all in one rotary switch. Usually the choke is somewhere else, but there is not a separate choke on this engine. I'm a big fan of these fasteners that use both Phillips and flathead screwdrivers. That way you can open this with just whatever you have around. So we have our air intake and air filter here. Carburetor will be behind that someplace. We have these little fuel drain or condensation drain lines. One problem here, this popped out right away. It's supposed to go through this little hole in the bottom, but it's pretty easy to just stick it back in place. Now this is something really thoughtful. There's a little drain plug down here that is really hard to get to, except they have gone to the effort of putting in an extra plug on the outside so you can pop that off and then you can get a tool in to that drain plug. So that's fantastic. Normal stuff built by American engineers have all of the parts completely inaccessible. You are not supposed to maintain anything, you are not supposed to work on anything, you are not supposed to ever be able to get to a bolt or a hole like that without disassembling the entire thing. Or at least that's the case if you're an American generator engineer, an automotive engineer. But these guys have actually made it easy for the home user to take things apart, to get to things that they might need to get to. That's super useful and super thoughtful. I appreciate that. So this orange plug here is our combination oil fill and dipstick, and it does not come with oil in it, so that is where the included bottle of oil comes in. You may have noticed the oil we put in was similar to regular car oil. That's because this is a 4-cycle engine, not an old 2-stroke, the old smoky, shaky ones that you might be familiar with from the 80s and 90s. So I was going to fire up the generator and show you how it worked, but ironically enough, it started raining. So the weather outside is kind of bad right now, and it's not ideal to drag a generator outside in the rain. The generator itself would probably be fine, but I don't really want to be standing out in a solid rainstorm, and I don't really want to run electrical wires outside in the rain either. So this is a great time to talk generator safety. Now we should all know that you cannot run a small gas engine in an enclosed space. We don't want to run this in a garage, especially in a garage attached to a house, because the exhaust contains CO2 and other gases that will kill you. So don't run this inside, ever. That being said, what do you do if it is pouring rain outside, your power's out because there's a hurricane or some other terrible storm, it's the middle of winter, there's snow coming down? Where do you run your generator? You can't run it inside, and if you run it outside, not only is there potentially bad weather, but in some kind of an emergency, somebody might steal this. So you want to consider all those things before there's an emergency, before there's a hurricane or a blizzard or a power outage. Before you even buy a generator, think about where are you going to put it, how are you going to run it, what are you going to do with the thing? And there are several different solutions. You could have a dedicated generator shed somewhere on your property, in your yard. You could build a small enclosure if you live somewhere with a very small yard. My solution here in Minnesota was to install a through-wall exhaust port and air intake in my garage so that I could run a generator in the security of the garage, but still have all the exhaust fumes go outside, have fresh air coming inside from another spot. Make sure to consult with the appropriate authorities and licensed contractors if you're going to do it somewhere that's subject to building code. All right, the weather is cleared up, so let's give that generator its first test. Now, I don't see anything in the manual about what kind of gasoline this prefers, other than we're not supposed to use more than 10% ethanol. So I'm sorry you folks in Iowa and the Midwest that have just ethanol gas everywhere. You'll have to use real gasoline. I'm going to go ahead and use premium higher octane gas because I have it, and it should give a little more performance out of the generator. Now this is our battery compartment for the electric start, and it's disconnected when they ship it, so we have to open this up, connect the battery, we'll turn it to run. Now it might take a few times because there's no fuel in it yet. There's fuel in the tank, but... And there we go! I'm actually surprised how quiet this is. It's only about 70 decibels up close, which is about the same as my car, so it's not as loud as I expected. Very straightforward. So one thing I didn't realize at first, you don't have to hold down the start button to start this. You just push it once, it cycles through, tries to start. If it doesn't start, it waits for a second, and then it tries again. So it is fully automatic. This is just a single push start button. That's really cool. Now I noticed in addition to the engine noise, there are some rattling noises from some of the plastic parts, like the handle and the wheels especially. If you get tired of that, you could probably put some tape or something on those parts just to keep them from rattling as much. So let's see how hard or easy it is to start with the pull cord. If your battery's dead, if the electric start isn't working, and you have to manually start it, how much of a pain is that? Then we'll check that little LCD display on the side against our voltmeter to see if it's accurate. And then we'll start hooking some things up and seeing how much equipment can this run. Now I won't load it right to the maximum 4500 watts or even the rated 3800 watts just yet. It's usually nice to give these things a break-in period, run it for a few hours before you really start demanding high output. I'm still pretty impressed with the noise level on this. I've tried name brand generators that are smaller, less powerful, and more noisy. So far the Powersmart, I think, really excels at low decibel output. To prove that, I'm actually filming with it running in the background right now. It's about 10 feet behind the camera. I've had it running for a while now just to break it in. I'm going to go ahead and turn it off, and you can compare yourself between this shot with the motor running. So here we are with the generator turned off, and you probably notice a little bit less ambient noise, but again, that noise isn't bad. Now let's see how it works for an off-grid property with some industrial use. All right, so we've come out to Sandland where the roads are pretty terrible if they exist at all. We brought the generator down the hill in the ATV trailer. Everything bounced around in here, including the generator, so well, the generator kind of rode on its face here on the way down the hill, but a few scratches, but it's not too bad. There it goes. Yeah, push it once and it just auto starts. All right, we are back from Sandland, and that is a place that is notoriously hard on equipment. Yeah, it's a kind of a torture test for machinery. So let's see how the generator did. As you saw in the video, it kind of took a ride down the hill in the ATV trailer, resting on this face, which was not ideal. I had it strapped down on its base. It bounced right out of that trailer because the road out there is terrible, and it bounced pretty much the entire trip down right on all the ports. But you know what? Everything looks fine. I don't see any actual damage to any of the ports here. We've got a couple little scuffs and dings here around the edge, but you know, nothing major. Let's see, we've got a couple other little scrapes and scratches. Now these little wheels are something I was worried about. They are kind of a thin plastic and they are a little bit loose to start with, but they've actually held up decently well. There are some little rocks and there's sand embedded in the wheels, so I don't know if these wheels would hold up long term. If you're dragging this across gravel every day, you would probably want to upgrade these, but for a paved surface, for just use on concrete or asphalt, these are probably sufficient. And they are pretty easy to swap out. There's just a couple bolts, this axle. You could pop out this entire wheel assembly and replace it if you wanted to. All right, still fires right up first try and works great. So in conclusion, I would say the Powersmart 4500 watt gas generator here does a really good job of providing power around the home, providing power out at remote properties, off-grid, at a job site. It runs all kinds of tools. We were running chop saws, we were running electric chainsaws, we were running drills, we were doing all kinds of work with it, up to and including mining. I was actually digging a tunnel using power from the Powersmart generator here and a handheld demolition jackhammer. So I would say it does pretty much everything I've asked of it. It has a lot of great features. That electric start is fantastic. I spend way too much of my life fighting with pull start gas engines, so that electric start really blows all of those out of the water, and especially the ability to just push and forget the button. You don't even have to hold the button down to start it. The CO2 alarm is also great. That huge array of outputs is nice. All kinds of AC outputs, DC outputs. Whenever I do one of these product reviews, I always try to be very fair and honest and tell you any downsides as well as all the good stuff. And I have not found any downsides with this. And in fact, I'm probably going to keep this one and use it as my backup power solution for the house, because if we have another power outage, if we have a big storm, we want to keep things running, critical systems like the chest freezer, the refrigerator, the furnace in the winter. The wheels, I think, are the only weak thing I could find about this, the only downside of it. And really, you can fix the rattling by just jamming a stick or a rag or duct tape in there. And if you really have to use this on a job site, you could pop the entire wheel thing off and put like some rubber tires on here. Thank you again to Powersmart for sending me the generator to test out. From what I've seen so far, I think it's a good generator. I will put all of the links to Powersmart's info down in the description if you want to buy this one or one of their other products. That will all be down below. You can check that out for yourself. I hope this has been a useful review for everyone. If you want to see more about the things we get up to out at Sandland, like the tunnel mining or outside projects or other off-grid things that we do out there, check out my other videos on the Sandland topic. Thanks again to everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.